Welcome back to the BookCast. Today we are unpacking every layer of the incredible novel Sense and Sensibility. Get ready for a deep dive into its characters, themes, and the hidden meanings behind the story. Our mission today is to guide you, our listener, through the core narrative, illuminate character motivations, and really extract key insights from the novel's most pivotal moments, all as laid out in the pages of this timeless work. We'll be following the story as it unfolds, seeing exactly how these characters navigate truly challenging situations. And to truly appreciate the genius of Jane Austen here, we need to understand the very heart of this novel, the interplay between sense and sensibility. Expert, how would you define these two crucial concepts as Austen uses them, and why are they so central to understanding our characters?
That's an excellent starting point, yeah, because these aren't just abstract ideas. They're like the very DNA of the Dashwood sisters. In Austen's time, sensibility wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It represented a heightened capacity for emotion, for empathy, for romantic idealism, a deep appreciation for beauty and art. It was often seen as a virtue, actually, a sign of a refined soul. However, and this is where Austen's brilliance really comes in, unchecked sensibility could also lead to imprudence, rash decisions, and an almost self-indulgent emotional excess. On the other hand, sense denoted practical judgment, prudence, rationality, a firm grasp of social decorum and financial realities. It was about thinking before acting, considering the consequences. The genius of Sense and Sensibility is in exploring the balance between these two qualities, rather than just saying what is good and what is bad. It asks, how much emotion is too much, and how much practicality can maybe stifle true feeling. These sisters, Eleanor and Marianne, they really embody these forces, and we'll watch them learn to navigate a world that demands both.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our story truly begins with the Dashwood family facing a seismic shift right from the start. We're introduced to a family suddenly without their patriarch and facing an incredibly uncertain future. And it's all thanks to a will that brings as much disappointment as pleasure. The old Mr. Dashwood, the man of the house, dies, and his will is read. It leaves his considerable estate, Norland, to his nephew, John Dashwood. But there's a catch, isn't there? It's on terms that destroyed half the value of the bequest. What does this entailment mean for the Dashwood women?
It's absolutely critical to grasp the full weight of that statement, yeah, because it immediately plunges the Dashwood women, the widow and her 3 daughters, into a state of profound financial precarity. And that precarity is, in fact, the true engine of the entire plot. In Austen's era, entailment meant that an estate, usually a big one like Norland, was legally tied to a male heir. It couldn't just be divided up or sold off. So while Mr. Dashwood Sr. could have provided for his wife and daughters from his personal fortune, and he did, somewhat, the estate itself had to go to John Dashwood, his nephew from a previous marriage. His dying wish was simply that John should assist his widow and daughters. Now, this seemingly simple request, this emotional plea, is immediately open to wildly varying degrees of generosity, or maybe more accurately, the stunning lack thereof. It raises a really important question right away. How binding are emotional promises, even deathbed ones, when they come up against cold, hard financial self-interest? And, societal expectations about inherited wealth. For women back then, especially without direct male heirs, their economic security was almost entirely dependent on the goodwill or the whim of others. It was a really vulnerable position.
And we see that play out almost immediately with Mr. John Dashwood and his wife Fanny. Austen describes John as not an ill-disposed young man, unless to be rather cold-hearted and rather selfish is to be ill-disposed. That feels like such a deceptively polite yet absolutely scathing Austenian critique, doesn't it? What's she doing with that kind of language? But then we meet Fanny, who seems to amplify his worst traits, becoming a strong caricature of himself, more narrow-minded and selfish. She's really quite something.
Austen's description of John is indeed classic. It's just a masterclass in understatement. It perfectly captures his moral weakness. He's not actively malicious, maybe, but he's easily swayed, especially by his wife. He lacks the moral backbone to act on his bitter impulses, assuming he even has strong ones. And Fanny, well, she's the one who truly puts the selfish in self-interest. Her calculations aren't just selfish. They are a chillingly pragmatic, almost mercenary reflection of the era's economic realities and the desperate need to maintain social status. We see her actively work to dismantle her husband's initial kind of vague promise to his dying father. Her mind immediately jumps to protecting her son's inheritance. She views giving, say, £3,000 from the fortune of their dear little boy as impoverishing him to the most dreadful degree.
£3,000?
Exactly. To her, this isn't kindness. It's a direct threat to her son's future, which is our absolute top concern, but it's twisted by greed. She even suggests that helping his half-sisters with a mere 500 pounds apiece would be beyond anything great. It just highlights her incredible meanness, her immovable disgust at any perceived offense of the kind, meaning any generosity that might possibly reduce her son's future wealth. It perfectly encapsulates her self-serving nature and sets this really chilling tone for the Dashwoods' future. It reinforces how material considerations can just brutally override any sense of familial duty.
So the devastating result of this ruthless negotiation, is a stark reality for Mrs. Dashwood and her three daughters, Eleanor, Marianne, and little Margaret. Including legacies, only £10,000 remain for the widow and daughters. They are left in what the novel politely calls a dependent situation. But that term, in Austen's world, carried immense, almost terrifying weight, didn't it? What did £10,000 really mean for their future, and why was this so significant?
Yeah, it's vital to put that £10,000 into perspective. Today, it might sound like a decent chunk of change, but in their society, it placed Mrs. Dashwood and her daughters in a really precarious middle ground. It wasn't utter poverty, not in the way we think of it now, but it severely limited their options, especially for the daughters, who had basically no way to earn their own living. For three young women and their mother, this sum would generate an annual income of maybe, what, £300 to £500 a year?
Which isn't nothing but.
It's exactly. Comfortable enough to avoid real hardship, but far from the wealth needed to keep up their former social standing, and certainly not enough to attract advantageous marriages without other factors like charm or connections. Their dependent situation wasn't just a polite way of saying less wealthy. It described their existential vulnerability. Marriage stopped being just about affection. It became an absolute necessity for security, for social acceptance, for any hope of a comfortable future. This financial vulnerability really is the engine of the whole plot. It forces the Dashwood women into situations where their choices, especially about marriage, become absolutely paramount for survival.
So, with this new, stark reality hanging over them, what does this mean for our characters as they're still living under the same roof at Norland? We get our first glimpse of Edward Ferrars and the budding affection between him and Eleanor. Edward, the eldest son of a rich man, is visiting, though his own fortune depended on the will of his mother, which gives him a kind of dependence too, right?
Exactly. It's an important parallel.
Mrs. Dashwood, ever the romantic, approves of his apparent amiability and love for Eleanor, which Eleanor, in her quiet, observant way, seems to return. Austen tells us Edward's understanding was good and his education had given it solid improvement. But, and this is a big but, he was neither fitted by abilities nor disposition to answer the wishes of his mother and sister, who longed to see him distinguished. They wanted him to make a fine figure in the world in some manner or other. It sounds like he's already battling external expectations, much like the Dashwood women are now.
Absolutely. And this paints Edward as a man of, solid internal worth, someone whose virtues are quiet, unassuming, deeply principled. Eleanor, with her discerning eye and rational mind, her sense, finds his quietness of manner no longer uninteresting when she knows his heart to be warm and his temper affectionate. This really shows Eleanor's sense in action. Her ability to look past the surface, past what society expects, to see a person's true character, their inner goodness. She doesn't need the outward flashiness or grand gestures. She values inner virtue and sound judgment. However, his dependent situation, relying on his formidable mother's will, that's going to become a significant obstacle. It's an early and really poignant example of how external pressures, especially from a demanding, status-obsessed family, can complicate and even threaten sincere affections, particularly when those affections don't align with their big ambitions for him. It's an early hint at that clash between genuine feeling and societal expectation, foreshadowing the difficult choices Edward will eventually face. It echoes the Dashwoods' own struggle for financial and emotional autonomy.
But Marianne, with her strong sensibility, has a very different take on Edward, doesn't she? She finds him utterly lacking, almost entirely dismissing him as a suitable partner for Eleanor.
Oh, completely. And here, Marianne vocalizes the core tenet of extreme sensibility, this demand for complete emotional and aesthetic congruence in a partner. It's a passionate, totally uncompromising vision of love. She explicitly states he is not the kind of young man. There is something wanting. His figure is not striking. It has none of that grace. His eyes want all that spirit, that fire. It is. And she goes on, and besides all this, I am afraid, Mama, he has no real taste. This isn't just a preference. It's a critical dismissal of his entire being based on this very narrow, idealized definition of what makes a worthy man, like a romantic hero from one of her books. She declares, with the absolute conviction of youth and passion, I could not be happy with a man whose taste did not at every point coincide with my own. He must enter into all my feelings. The same books, the same music must charm us both. It's a powerful, almost utopian ideal of intimacy, setting a bar so high that few, if any, could realistically meet it. It really reveals her own susceptibility to passionate ideals, to surface appearances and shared emotional intensity, rather than, practical realities or the quiet virtues Edward embodies. Her standard is emotional and artistic perfection, not solid character or compatibility.
Eleanor, ever the voice of sense, tries to temper Marianne's expectations, but you can see the fundamental difference in their outlooks, almost immediately setting up the central conflict of the novel.
Yeah, this subtle difference in how they see Edward foreshadows so much of the sisters' contrasting journeys. Eleanor appreciates the solid worth beneath the surface. She recognizes that shyness and modesty can often hide true merit. She defends Edward, praising his excellent understanding and his principles, which are only concealed by that shyness. She even points out that his taste for drawing is pure and correct, even if he doesn't actively draw himself. She values the appreciation of art over the showy performance of it.
Interesting distinction.
It is. Eleanor doesn't demand outward flashiness. She values inner virtue, sound judgment, and emotional maturity that Marianne clearly lacks at this stage. Marianne, in contrast, is drawn entirely to outward brilliance and shared emotional intensity. She dismisses Edward because he doesn't fit her preconceived romantic ideal. It's a key early example of how sense, prudence, reason, understated virtue, and sensibility, intense emotion, romantic idealism, a craving for outward expression, are defined and will clash throughout the novel. It shapes their choices, their sufferings, and ultimately their paths to happiness.
The tension at Norland, fueled by Fanny's unkindness and just the general unpleasantness, soon reaches a breaking point. Mrs. Dashwood resolves to leave Norland. She's convinced her beloved Eleanor should not be exposed another week to such insinuations from Mrs. John Dashwood. It becomes more like an escape than just a simple move, doesn't it?
Indeed. The abruptness of their departure really underscores the profound financial and social vulnerability of women without independent means. They are, quite literally, driven out of their own home by the petty tyranny of their relative. It shows how quickly their reduced circumstances translate into a loss of autonomy and dignity. The narrative tells us that a letter arrives from a relation, Sir John Middleton, offering a small house on very easy terms in Devonshire Barton Cottage. And crucially, the text says the situation of Barton, in a county so far distant from Sussex, was now its first recommendation.
Getting away was the main point.
Exactly. Moving away from Norland, despite the smaller house and lower status, becomes a blessing compared to the misery of continuing her daughter-in-law's guest. It's not just a change of address, it's a desperate retreat from an unbearable situation, a necessary escape from a home that has become emotionally oppressive.
Yeah.
It reinforces how their lack of money dictates their every move and forces them into these uncomfortable compromises.
So the Dashwoods embark on their journey to Devonshire, leaving behind the cold comfort of Norland. What awaits them at Barton Cottage? It's quite a change, a significant downgrade from their former home, isn't it?
The description of Barton Cottage immediately sets a clear contrast. Yeah, both physical and symbolic. It's described as poor and small indeed compared to the grander Norland. It reflects their reduced social standing and economic means. However, Austen injects a little touch of optimism. She notes that the tears which recollection called forth were soon dried away by the joy of their loyal servants and the pleasant view.
So not all gloom.
No, not entirely. The cottage, with its 2 sitting rooms about 16 feet square, 4 bedrooms, and 2 garrets, suggests a cozy but undeniably modest existence. While it represents a step down in grandeur and outward status, it also offers a potential upgrade in peace and independence. They're free from Fanny's tyranny. They can create their own haven, however humble. It's a place where they can begin to rebuild their lives, free from the immediate unpleasantness and constant scrutiny of Norland.
And as they settle in, they're quickly introduced to their new social circle. First up is their benefactor, Sir John Middleton. He sounds like quite a lively character, almost a breath of fresh air after the Dashwood Ferrars drama.
Sir John is indeed a vibrant, if sometimes, boisterous personality. He contrasts sharply with the calculated coldness of Fanny Dashwood. He's a very good-humored, merry, open-hearted man who loves company, especially the juvenile part of the neighborhood. He's genuinely charmed with the inhabitants he had now procured for his cottage, finding the Miss Dashwoods young, pretty, and unaffected. He even laments not being able to find any smart young men to meet them, and with a distinct lack of subtlety, hoped they had not left their hearts behind them in Sussex.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Sir John embodies this hearty, albeit sometimes clumsy, benevolence. He genuinely wants to bring joy and company to his new neighbors, but his frankness and eagerness to tease about romance can sometimes border on impropriety. While well-meaning, he lacks the refined sensibility and discretion that Eleanor values, and which Marianne, ironically, values in her romantic ideals, just not in her landlord. His character provides a lively, if occasionally awkward, entry into the social world of Barton.
The social circle at Barton expands further with the introduction of Lady Middleton, Sir John's wife, and her mother, Mrs. Jennings. Expert, these two characters present a fascinating, almost caricatured contrast in social graces. What do their distinct personalities reveal about this social landscape the Dashwoods are entering?
They are indeed a study in contrast, yes, and together they really set the stage for the kind of social scrutiny the Dashwood sisters are going to endure. Lady Middleton, though only not more than 6 or 7 and 20, and possessing a handsome, tall, and striking figure and graceful address, is essentially a figure of superficial elegance. Her manners, Austen tells us, would have been improved by some share of his frankness and warmth, suggesting a certain coldness or emotional detachment. She's only really roused to enjoyment by the entrance of her 4 noisy children, which implies a lack of genuine intellectual or emotional engagement beyond her immediate, perhaps rather dull, domestic sphere. Her mother, Mrs. Jennings, on the other hand, is characterized by an almost overwhelming, noisy cheerfulness and an eager, totally unreserved interest in other people's romantic prospects. She immediately starts pretending to see them blush. This introduces the social landscape of Barton Park, a blend of well-meaning but often clumsy hospitality. Lady Middleton represents a kind of superficial civility, prioritizing outward appearances and conventional elegance without much inner warmth, while Mrs. Jennings, though fundamentally kind-hearted and generous, is a persistent gossip and matchmaker. This highlights the constant social scrutiny and often intrusive curiosity that women in their position faced, particularly concerning their eligibility for marriage.
And then, almost immediately, we meet Colonel Brandon, a figure who instantly sparks Marianne's disapproval even before he says much. He's introduced as being quite different from the boisterous Sir John.
He is indeed. Colonel Brandon seemed no more adapted by resemblance of manner to be his friend than Lady Middleton was to be his wife, which is quite a statement. He's described as grave and silent, a stark contrast to the lively Sir John and the garrulous Mrs. Jennings. This quiet demeanor immediately puts him at odds with Marianne's sensibility-driven expectations. When Marianne plays music, he, alone, of all the party, heard her without being in raptures. He paid her only the compliment of attention, a subtle but really significant detail.
She wants the raptures, though.
Exactly. This early interaction perfectly sets up Marianne's judgment, which prioritizes outward passion and shared artistic fervor above everything else. She dismisses him outright, saying he is just the kind of man whom everybody speaks well of and nobody cares about, whom all are delighted to see and nobody remembers to talk to. Brutal. She adds, cuttingly, that he has neither genius, taste, nor spirit. For Marianne, this lack of immediate, visible enthusiasm, this quiet reserve, is just a sign of an unromantic and dull character. However, his compliment of attention is in fact far more profound than the shallow raptures of others, which are often fleeting. It's a crucial demonstration of Marianne's initial misjudgment, prioritizing outward display and emotional fireworks over genuine depth, quiet respect, and solid character, which is a core conflict of the novel's themes.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Marianne's life takes a dramatic turn with the entrance of the dashing Mr. Willoughby. It's a classic romantic meet-cute, straight out of one of Marianne's beloved novels, but with a, dramatic twist.
Willoughby's entrance is almost theatrical, yeah. It's a perfect storm for Marianne's romantic imagination, like it was tailor-made for her sensibility. Marianne and Margaret go for a walk despite the bad weather, which says something about Marianne's impetuous nature. They get caught in the rain, and Marianne falls, spraining her ankle. And who should appear, as if summoned by fate itself, but the handsome Mr. Willoughby? He gallantly carries her home. He introduces himself as a visitor at Allenham, related to the old lady there, and whose possessions he was to inherit. Plus, he has a pretty little estate of his own in Somersetshire.
So he has prospects.
Big prospects. Margaret, with more elegance than precision, styles him Marianne's preserver. Marianne, in her own words, describes his person and air as equal to what her fancy had ever drawn for the hero of a favorite story, and she even finds a shooting jacket the most becoming. Right. His heroic act, combined with his good looks, charming manners, and the prospect of an inheritance, immediately elevates him to the status of a romantic hero in her mind. This is sensibility in full bloom, prioritizing immediate, powerful impressions and romantic idealization over any careful, sensible assessment of character or long-term suitability.
The immediate connection between Marianne and Willoughby is palpable, fueled by shared passions. They fall into this deep, intense intimacy almost instantly, as if they were always meant to find each other.
This rapid, unreserved sharing of feelings and tastes is exactly Marianne's ideal of intimacy. It's a direct contrast to Eleanor's more guarded and observant approach. They discover mutual enjoyment of dancing and music and a general conformity of judgment in all that related to either. Their taste was strikingly alike. The same books, the same passages were idolized by each, leading Marianne to talk to him without shyness nor reserve, something she would absolutely never do with Edward. Eleanor, with her characteristic sense, observes their rapid intimacy and, with a touch of prescient wit, quips, "How is your acquaintance to be long supported under such extraordinary dispatch of every subject for discourse? You will soon have exhausted each favorite topic."
She sees it coming.
She does. This keen observation by Eleanor highlights the potential fragility of an attachment based solely on superficial conformity of judgment, an intense, immediate emotional outpouring, rather than deeper understanding and proven character. It hints that such a rapid, unchecked connection, devoid of prudence or a gradual building of trust, might lack the substance for a lasting bond. It definitely foreshadows the heartbreak to come.
The relationship quickly intensifies, almost alarmingly so, much to Eleanor's growing concern. It's not just words and shared interests. Willoughby starts making significant, costly gestures, which Marianne, in her romantic fervor, accepts without a second thought.
Yeah, this incident is a crucial point in understanding Marianne's impulsiveness and her striking lack of practical foresight, driven entirely by her sensibility. Willoughby gives Marianne a horse he bred himself, a grand gesture of affection.
Of course.
A horse. Marianne accepts without hesitation, despite knowing it's not in her mother's plan to keep any horse. Eleanor immediately calculates the financial implications, not just the expense of keeping the horse, but needing another horse for his servant, a servant to ride it, a stable to build costs the Dashwood family simply cannot afford.
Practical, Eleanor.
Always. Yet, Marianne sees no impropriety in accepting it from Willoughby. She believes that it is disposition alone that determines intimacy, and that 7 days are more than enough to truly know some people. She even argues she'd feel more impropriety accepting such a gift from her own brother, John, of whom she knows very little, which highlights her skewed moral compass when her emotions are involved.
Interesting logic.
Very. Eleanor, on the other hand, sees the clear breach of propriety and the potential financial complications. Her sense dictates a cautious approach to such extravagant gifts from a man who isn't yet family, whose intentions aren't fully established. It's a stark illustration of Marianne's blindness to practical realities and social conventions when her emotions are fully engaged.
Just as their attachment seems undeniable, almost certainly leading to a proposal, Willoughby makes a sudden, unsettling departure. It's abrupt, and the reasons are vague, which immediately sets off alarm bells for Eleanor. But Marianne, of course, has a completely different interpretation.
This unexplained, almost evasive departure is the first significant crack in Marianne's romantic ideal, though she's too blinded by her sensibility to see it yet. Willoughby comes to Barton Cottage to say farewell. He explains that Mrs. Smith, his wealthy relation, has exercised the privilege of riches upon a poor dependent cousin by sending me on business to London. He states he has no idea of returning into Devonshire immediately. Are of such a nature that I dare not.
I dare not. That sounds suspicious.
Very. Eleanor, ever observant and grounded in sense, immediately notices Willoughby's embarrassment and affectation of cheerfulness and his backwardness so unlike a lover, so unlike himself, especially his unwillingness to accept Mrs. Dashwood's invitation to return soon. This hints at a deeper, more troubling reality beneath Willoughby's charming exterior. Marianne, however, completely consumed by her sensibility, interprets his distress and vague replies as proof of his strong, constant attachment and his suffering due to the forced separation. She completely misses the underlying deceit that Eleanor's rational eye detects. This moment truly highlights the chasm between their approaches to interpreting human behavior and definitely foreshadows the impending heartbreak.
After Willoughby's sudden and unsettling exit, Marianne plunges into an intense period of grief, a really dramatic contrast to her earlier effervescence and passion. And then Edward Ferrars makes his much-anticipated but ultimately disappointing return to Barton.
Marianne's reaction is just a textbook example of extreme sensibility, isn't it? Indulging her sorrow rather than seeking solace or distraction. She's awake the whole night, weeping, suffering from a headache, unable to talk or eat. She deliberately courts the misery which a contrast between the past and present was certain of giving. It's almost masochistic. She plays favorite songs she shared with Willoughby, gazes at music he wrote for her, rereads books they enjoyed together. She spends hours at the piano, alternately singing and crying, her voice often totally suspended by her tears. This really demonstrates the destructive potential of an unchecked emotional response, where grief isn't just felt, but actively cultivated and allowed to consume the person. It deeply contrasts with Eleanor's own approach to suffering, which, as we'll see, is born with immense fortitude and a very private, contained strength. Then Edward Ferrars arrives at Barton, and he's not quite the man Marianne expects or desires for her sister, or perhaps for anyone in her romantic ideals. His subdued demeanor is such a stark contrast to Willoughby's flamboyant charm and passionate expressions. Edward's subdued demeanor and pragmatic observations are indeed a stark contrast to Willoughby's intensity, and it further alienates Marianne and reinforces her negative judgment of him. Edward joins Eleanor and Marianne on a walk, but he looked neither rapturous nor gay, said little but what was forced from him by questions, and distinguished Eleanor by no mark of affection.
Mm.
He just seems preoccupied and distant.
Not exactly swoon-worthy for Marianne.
Not at all. When Marianne, still seeking that shared aesthetic rapture, points out, "Beautiful country," Edward replies, with typical practicality. "But these bottoms must be dirty in winter," and points to a very dirty lane. Right. He later makes a subtle joke about Marianne's book and music spending habits if she were rich, reminding her of their old disputes and his own grounded nature. His comments about the landscape, while seemingly mundane to Marianne, highlight his grounding in reality over romantic idealism, much to Marianne's disdain for his perceived lack of taste and spirit. For Marianne, Edward's lack of immediate, visible enthusiasm and his practicality are just signs of an unromantic and dull character, making him wholly unsuitable in her eyes.
Eleanor, always trying to reconcile her feelings with reality, struggles profoundly with Edward's inconsistent behavior. She sees the signs of his detachment but tries desperately to rationalize them, revealing her own suppressed feelings and hopes.
This reveals Eleanor's remarkable capacity for enduring private suffering, and her sense working overtime to protect her heart while still trying to be rational. She attributes Edward's want of spirits of openness and of consistency to his want of independence and his better knowledge of Mrs. Ferrars's dispositions and designs, meaning his difficult mother and ambitious sister. She blames external factors. She clings to the hope of his continued affection, especially that flattering proof of it which he constantly wore around his finger. A ring, she believes, signifies his attachment to her.
The ring.
Yes, remember the ring. Her sense allows her to rationalize Edward's behavior by considering his difficult family situation and the pressures he's under, rather than condemning him outright like Marianne would. She tries to find logical, external explanations for his emotional detachment. It shows her deep desire to believe in his good character and the sincerity of his earlier affections, even as the evidence starts to stack against her. It is a really powerful portrayal of her quiet inner turmoil.
The social scene at Barton expands further with the arrival of new relatives, the Miss Steeles, and one of them will drop a bombshell that fundamentally shifts the narrative and shatters Eleanor's quietly cherished hopes.
Right, Mrs. Jennings introduces her relations, Miss Lucy and Miss Anne Steele, who immediately appear to be, social climbers. They are delighted with the house and in raptures with the furniture and dotingly fond of children, all very calculated flattery. Lucy Steele is described as naturally clever, but possessing a thorough want of delicacy, of rectitude, and integrity of mind. That's a pretty damning indictment from Austen, even delivered subtly.
It really is.
Lucy's superficial charms and exaggerated flattery quickly win over Lady Middleton, who thinks they're very agreeable girls indeed. However, Eleanor, with her discerning eye and sharp sense, sees right through the insincerity with ignorance and the want of instruction that makes genuine conversation with Lucy difficult. Lucy and Anne are adept at social maneuvering, but they lack genuine substance or refinement. It's a subtle but significant distinction for the Dashwood sisters. They represent a different kind of social opportunism, maybe less dramatic than Willoughby's, but equally insidious to genuine feeling and integrity.
And then, the revelation that shatters Eleanor's world. Lucy's secret, delivered under the guise of an intimate confidence. This must have been absolutely devastating for Eleanor, who had been quietly holding on to hope.
This is such a pivotal moment in the novel, A truly massive blow to Eleanor's quietly cherished hopes, revealing the immense emotional cost of her sense and composure. Lucy, strategically seeking intimacy with Eleanor, asked her opinion of Mrs. Ferrars. And then, with this feigned shyness and a calculated air of vulnerability, she confesses, "Mrs. Ferrars is certainly nothing to me at present, but the time may come when we may be very intimately connected.
Oh, no.
She clarifies she means not to Mr. Robert Ferrars, but to Mr. Edward Ferrars. Lucy then unveils the carefully constructed details. They've been engaged these 4 years, since Edward was young, under my uncle's care. And she mentions giving him a lock of my hair set in a ring, which Eleanor, with a jolt of recognition and absolute pain, remembers seeing on Edward's finger.
The ring, of course.
Exactly. She speaks of their continual separation and Edward's lowness of spirits, framing it as suffering for their secret love, trying to gain sympathy and establish her claim. Lucy's amiably bashful confession, coupled with these strategic details, the ring, the duration, the suffering, is clearly calculated to establish her claim and test Eleanor's reaction. Eleanor's internal struggle to maintain composure of voice despite her agitated feelings is a profound testament to her strength of sense and her rigid adherence to social duty, even when it means hiding her own heartbreak. It highlights the silent suffering of a sensible character, forced to bury her own pain for propriety's sake.
The irony here is that Lucy confesses this to Eleanor, whom she perceives, or at least pretends to perceive, as an indifferent person in this matter, completely unaware of Eleanor's true feelings for Edward.
Lucy's statement is indeed deeply manipulative. Yeah, it's a false deference to Eleanor's judgment, knowing full well Eleanor would never counsel breaking an honorable engagement, especially given her own principles. Lucy tells Eleanor, I know nobody of whose judgment I think so highly as I do of yours, and I do really believe that if you was to say to me, I advise you by all means to put an end to your engagement with Edward Ferrars, I should resolve upon doing it immediately. Right. Eleanor, whose inner world is now in complete turmoil, blushes for the insincerity of Edward's future wife, seeing right through Lucy's performance and her attempt to appear virtuous. This reveals Lucy's moral relativism and her desire to appear morally upright while ruthlessly pursuing her own self-interest. It's a calculated move to secure her position and maybe subtly gauge any potential rivalry. It further solidifies Eleanor's understanding of Lucy's character as deceitful and self-serving, and it complicates Edward's already difficult entanglement. This conversation forces Eleanor to bear the weight of a secret that devastates her, testing her composure and her commitment to ethical conduct in the face of profound personal pain.
Our sisters now find themselves in London, a place of potential excitement and new opportunities, a vibrant social hub. But for Marianne, tragically, it becomes the stage for profound heartbreak and, a brutal awakening. They've accepted Mrs. Jennings' invitation to the city, but with very different motivations, haven't they?
This journey to London really highlights the contrasting motivations of the sisters, and the consuming nature of Marianne's sensibility. Mrs. Jennings invites Eleanor and Marianne to London for the season. Marianne eagerly accepts, despite being fastidious as she was, thoroughly acquainted with Mrs. Jennings' manners and invariably disgusted by them.
Quite the review.
Isn't it? Yet she overlooks every inconvenience in her pursuit of one object, Willoughby, believing London will reunite them. Her single-minded pursuit of him blinds her to social discomforts and practical considerations. Eleanor, ever the protector and guided by her sense, agrees to go mainly because she did not think it proper that Marianne should be left to the sole guidance of her own judgment.
Good call.
Definitely. Eleanor actively suppresses her own discomfort with Mrs. Jennings' incessant gossiping and boisterousness for her sister's welfare and to keep a watchful eye. It's a stark illustration of how Eleanor's sense of duty and protective love overrides her personal preferences and private suffering, offering a poignant contrast to Marianne's almost reckless abandon.
Marianne's hopes soar upon arriving in London, fueled by her romantic imagination, only to be utterly crushed by Willoughby's shocking behavior, a public snub that must have been just a devastating experience for her.
The starkness of Willoughby's public snub is truly devastating, yes. A painful contrast to Marianne's open affection and high expectations, and a cruel test of her sensibility. Marianne anxiously awaits Willoughby's arrival in London. Her agitation increased as the evening drew on, every knock at the door sending her heart soaring. When a knock finally comes, she literally jumps up, starting up, move towards the door, only to find it's Colonel Brandon, deepening her disappointment. Very. Later, at a large London ball, Eleanor sees Willoughby in earnest conversation with a very fashionable-looking young woman, Miss Grey, who Marianne doesn't know yet. He bows to Eleanor, just a mere acknowledgement, but then, devastatingly, he does not approach Marianne. He ignores her. Marianne, utterly mortified and publicly humiliated, is too miserable to stay a minute longer after seeing him ignore her. We later learned she had sent him 2 affectionate notes, one expressing surprise and expectation of seeing him, the second expressing disappointment at missing him and astonishment at receiving no reply. She even attached a lock of her hair and confirmed her London address.
Oh, Marianne, no.
It underscores her complete lack of reserve, her innocent vulnerability, and the depth of her misplaced trust. It makes his subsequent coldness and public humiliation all the more cruel. It's a moment where sensibility, in its rawest, most exposed form, is brutally confronted by a callous lack of reciprocity and indifference, exposing its profound vulnerability.
The ultimate blow comes shortly after, in the form of a letter, clarifying Willoughby's true intentions and leaving no room for doubt or romantic interpretation for Marianne. This must have been the final crushing weight for her.
This letter is indeed the definitive betrayal, one that completely shatters Marianne's romantic illusions and exposes Willoughby's profound selfishness. Eleanor finds Marianne stretched on the bed, almost choked by grief, one letter in her hand and two or three others lying by her. The letter in her hand is from Willoughby, stating with cold precision that his affections have been long engaged elsewhere, and that he never meant to express more than esteem for Marianne.
Just esteem, wow.
Exactly. He then brutally reveals he's to marry Miss Grey, who possesses a substantial £50,000. That figure, £50,000, provides the stark material explanation for his actions. It lays bare that his charming exterior masked a calculating individual driven solely by financial gain. It's a brutal lesson for Marianne in the mercenary realities of their society, and the two or three other letters Eleanor sees. Those are Marianne's earlier, deeply affectionate notes, which make Willoughby's cold, calculating response, devoid of any genuine feeling, even more appalling and cruel. It's a moment of complete and utter disillusionment, a brutal awakening from her cherished romantic dream.
Marianne is utterly devastated by this revelation, truly at the depths of despair. But Eleanor, despite her own secret pain over Edward's engagement, steps up as her unwavering support, demonstrating immense fortitude and sisterly love.
Marianne's grief is overwhelming, almost self-destructive. She screams with agony and cries, "Eleanor, I must go home. I must go and comfort Mama." In her rawest moment, she makes a really poignant admission. There has been no engagement. He is not so unworthy as you believe him. He has broken no faith with me.
So she blames herself.
Partially, yes. She adds, it was every day implied, but never professedly declared. This admission deepens her personal responsibility for her unchecked sensibility. Her grief is compounded by self-reproach, realizing her own imprudence and projecting so much onto Willoughby without a formal declaration. Adding to the realism, Mrs. Jennings, with her usual noisy cheerfulness, delivers more gossip, confirming the marriage and revealing Miss Grey is a smart, stylish girl, not handsome, and that Willoughby is all to pieces financially, hence his desperate need for a rich wife.
Rubbing salt in the wound.
Pretty much. Eleanor's steadfast support through this most cruel affliction demonstrates her quiet strength and the power of sense in navigating profound emotional distress. She endures her own secret suffering from Edward's engagement, a parallel heartbreak, while prioritizing her sister's immediate needs, proving her unwavering duty and deep affection.
While Marianne reels from Willoughby's devastating betrayal, Colonel Brandon, often perceived as this quiet, even dull figure, steps forward with a profound revelation. It's a melancholy confidence that sheds new light on his character and connects directly to Marianne's plight, almost as if he understands her suffering on a deeply personal level. It's a moment that really recontextualizes everything we thought we knew about him.
This backstory is indeed crucial, a powerful turning point that completely reframes Brandon's character and reveals his deep capacity for love and suffering. It profoundly challenges Marianne's superficial judgment of him. After observing Marianne's distress, Brandon tells Eleanor his own tragic story. He reveals his youthful love for Eliza, an orphan under his father's guardianship, a woman he passionately adored. However, due to his family's encumbered estate and Eliza's large fortune, she was married against her inclination to my brother, an act of mercenary expediency by their families.
Awful.
Terrible. He recounts how they were within a few hours of eloping together for Scotland before their plans were tragically betrayed. Eliza experienced great unkindness in her marriage and eventually divorced. Brendan found her much later, broken by life, living in consequence of a shameful connection with a man who had seduced her from her husband. Eliza had a daughter, also named Eliza, for whom Brandon, with immense selflessness, became a guardian, placing her at school and later bringing her to Delaford.
So the second Eliza.
Yes, the one Willoughby wronged, as we later learn implicitly through his confession. Brandon's past experience makes his quiet observation and empathy for Marianne particularly poignant. He has witnessed firsthand the destructive consequences of unchecked passion, societal pressure, and male villainy. The parallel between the first Eliza's vulnerability, her being forced into marriage and later seduced, and Marianne's heedless affection for Willoughby is striking. It offers a cautionary tale of what unchecked sensibility, combined with a lack of prudence and a mercenary society, can lead to. His telling of the story shows his quiet depth, his moral rectitude, and genuine concern attributes Marianne initially failed to see, but which Eleanor, with her sense, recognizes as true worth.
Shortly after this deeply personal confession, Marianne's emotional distress escalates dramatically into a severe physical illness, threatening her very life. It's almost as if her body can no longer bear the strain of her emotional torment.
Marianne's illness is a literal physical manifestation of her emotional collapse, yeah? A direct and devastating consequence of her unrestrained sensibility and the crushing blow of Willoughby's betrayal. While visiting Mrs. Palmer at Cleveland after a restless and feverish night, Marianne is unable to sit up and confesses she is gravely ill. Her pulse is lower and quicker than ever, and she starts talking wildly of Mama, descending into a feverish delirium. Eleanor, in deep alarm, springs into action, demonstrating her profound sense in a crisis. She immediately sends for Mr. Harris, the apothecary, and desperately dispatches a messenger to Barton for her mother. Colonel Brandon, without hesitation or a moment's thought for himself, immediately offered himself as the messenger who should fetch Mrs. Dashwood, riding tirelessly through the night.
A true hero in his own quiet way.
Absolutely. Eleanor's tireless care and decisive action, contrasted with her earlier silent suffering and Marianne's self-indulgent grief, showcases her immense inner strength, practicality, and unwavering love for her sister. Grandon's selfless act of rushing to fetch Mrs. Dashwood further solidifies his true character, quiet, reliable, and deeply caring, a stark contrast to Willoughby's superficial charm and ultimately self-serving nature. This crisis truly brings out the best in Eleanor and Brandon, solidifying their virtues and their profound capacity for action in a moment of dire need.
As Marianne slowly recovers from her near-fatal illness, the intricate web of engagements and disinheritances begins to unravel, revealing some truly unexpected twists, particularly concerning the Ferrars family. It's almost as if the novel wants to ensure everyone has their secrets and choices laid bare.
This highly dramatic scene, relayed, of course, through Mrs. Jennings's characteristically gossipy style, finally confirms Lucy's early revelation to Eleanor, but with far greater public impact. Mrs. Jennings, returning from a visit, is just bursting with news about the Ferrars family, exclaiming, "Mr. Edward Ferrars has been engaged above this 12-month to my cousin Lucy."
The secret's out!
Big time. She recounts a terrible scene at John Dashwood's house where Mrs. John Dashwood, Fanny, consumed by fury at the secret engagement, scolded like any fury, driving Lucy into a fainting fit. Mrs. Ferrars, Edward's formidable mother, is in an agony over the secret engagement. She had meticulously planned a far more eligible connection for him with Miss Morton, a woman possessing £30,000 and the social standing to match.
All about the money and status again.
Always. This incident brutally exposes the harsh realities of societal expectations and the ruthless pursuit of wealth within aristocratic families. Mrs. Ferrars' outrage underscores the prevailing belief that filial duty should align explicitly with financial advantage and social climbing. Her desire for a desirable connection for her son with £1,000 a year shows her deeply materialistic nature, placing wealth and status above any genuine affection or personal happiness for her children.
Edward, true to his word to Lucy, faces severe consequences from his mother because of this engagement. It's a moment where his character is truly tested, and he has to choose between wealth and honor.
This is such a pivotal moment for Edward, revealing the quiet strength and integrity that Marianne initially dismissed. Edward's unwavering commitment to his engagement, despite the severe financial penalty, speaks volumes about his inherent sense and profound sense of duty qualities that Marianne, in her impetuous judgment, initially dismissed as dullness. He steadfastly refuses to give up his engagement to Lucy, stating with remarkable resolve, nothing should prevail on him to give up his engagement. He would stand to it, cost him what it might.
Wow, even for Lucy.
Even for Lucy. As a direct result, Edward is dismissed forever from his mother's notice, disinherited from his expected fortune, and left with only the interest of £2,000, a tiny sum for a gentleman. John Dashwood, ever concerned with appearances and finances, laments Edward's deplorable situation, wondering, how can a man live on it? He later states, there is one thing more preparing against him, which must be worse than all, referring to the prospect of his younger brother Robert inheriting the estate instead. It's a quiet heroism from Edward, valuing honor and integrity over immense wealth and familial approval, a clear triumph of his inherent sense over societal and familial pressure, even if the object of that honor is, in hindsight, pretty unworthy of his sacrifice.
And then comes the truly shocking twist in the Ferrars family drama. It's a development that no one, especially Eleanor, could have anticipated, and it shifts the entire landscape of their relationships.
This turn of events is the ultimate irony, isn't it? And a profound commentary on the mercenary nature of some social attachments. It reveals how superficiality and opportunism can trump genuine feeling and loyalty. Robert Ferrars, Edward's younger brother, the quintessential coxcomb, who was openly critical of Edward's lack of style or elegance, and who thought Lucy the merest awkward country girl, shockingly marries Lucy Steele.
What? How?
Exactly. Eleanor is utterly bewildered, wondering how they could be thrown together, and by what attraction Robert could be drawn on to marry a girl of whose beauty she had herself heard him speak without any admiration, a girl, too, already engaged to his brother, and on whose heck that brother had been thrown off by his family. It's a masterstroke of cynical opportunism. Lucy, in her ruthless ambition and desire for financial security, simply switches brothers to secure her future as the now heir's wife. It demonstrates a pure, unadulterated self-interest.
Unbelievable.
Her letter to Edward seals it, signing herself Lucy Ferrars and coldly stating, "I have burnt all your letters and will return your picture the first opportunity." This turn of events isn't just a plot device. It's a stark demonstration of how superficiality and self-interest can triumph, at least temporarily, in a society valuing status and wealth above all else, and how quickly alliances can shift when fortunes are involved.
This unexpected turn of events, this astonishing development in the Ferrars family, brings a profound ray of hope for Eleanor, who has suffered so patiently and silently through her own heartbreak.
Absolutely. This moment marks the true turning point for Eleanor. Colonel Brandon, ever the quiet pillar of virtue and generosity, learns of Edward's disinheritance and his intention to take holy orders to support himself. So Brandon offers him the living of Delaford, now just vacant, and only wishes it were more valuable. It is about 200 a year, offering Edward much-needed independence. Always there, quietly helping. Edward, white with agitation, first arrives at Barton not to propose to Eleanor, but to deliver the astonishing news of Robert and Lucy's marriage. Freed from his prior obligation, and with the sudden dawn of a new independent future thanks to Brandon's benevolence, he then confesses to Eleanor. He describes his first boyish attachment to Lucy, treated with all the philosophic dignity of 24, calling it a foolish, idle inclination on my side, the consequence of ignorance of the world and want of employment.
Finally admits it.
Yes. This profound confession highlights the dramatic difference between a youthful, ill-advised attachment based on proximity and idleness, and true, mature love based on genuine compatibility and respect. It finally validates Eleanor's long-held belief in his character and the inherent good sense beneath his shyness, proving that her patience and quiet faith were ultimately rewarded. Braden's generosity, offered without fanfare, provides Edward with the independence he desperately needed, indirectly paving the way for his happiness and Eleanor's.
So, after so much quiet suffering and so many unexpected turns, what does this all mean? Eleanor and Edward's story finally reaches its resolution, a hard-won victory after enduring so many tests of character.
This resolution affirms the enduring value of sense, patience, and true, deep affection over superficial charms or societal pressures. Edward, finally free and secure, declares his profound affection for Eleanor, an affection as tender, as constant as she had ever supposed it to be. Eleanor, who was borne so much in silence, is oppressed. She was overcome by her own felicity, a deeply emotional yet quiet culmination of her long-held hopes. Their combined income, with the Delaford living and their own small fortunes, reaches £350 a year.
Enough to live on comfortably.
Well, not grand. It was a respectable, comfortable income for a country clergyman and his wife. It allowed them to live with dignity and independence, free from the kind of financial anxieties that plagued the Dashwoods early on. Eleanor's quiet steadfastness, her unwavering commitment to principle, and her capacity for enduring private suffering is ultimately rewarded. Her story shows that genuine worth, though sometimes overlooked or rigorously tested, ultimately finds its just recognition. Their marriage is a testament to shared principles and mutual respect, built on a foundation of reality and proven character rather than romantic fantasy or fleeting passion. It's a quieter, more grounded happiness, certainly, but one that feels ultimately more enduring and deeply satisfying.
While Eleanor finds her hard-won happiness, there's a poignant moment where Willoughby reappears, offering a confession to Eleanor that deepens our understanding of his complex character, even if it can't change the past. It's a surprisingly complex scene, showing a different side to the man who caused so much heartbreak.
This confession is absolutely crucial, yeah. It provides a complex portrait of Willoughby, revealing him not as a purely evil villain, but as a deeply flawed individual. a victim of his own extravagance and selfishness. He unexpectedly arrives at Cleveland, finding Eleanor alone, and insists on speaking to her for half an hour for 10 minutes, despite her attempts to dismiss him. He's not intoxicated or swaggering, but rather genuinely distressed and repentant. He confesses his initial attraction to Marianne was indeed based on vanity and amusement, with no design of returning her affection with any serious intent.
Ouch, that's cold.
It is. He explains his financial desperation, needing to marry a woman of fortune to salvage his ruined estate and reputation. He describes how Mrs. Smith, his wealthy relation, disinherited him upon learning of his dishonorable usage of Eliza Williams, Colonel Brandon's ward, the second Eliza.
Ah, the connection.
Exactly. His subsequent marriage to Miss Grey for £50,000 was an act of cunning folly, driven by sheer necessity rather than love. Yet, in a moment of raw honesty, he still claims to love Marianne. Her taste, her opinions, I believe they are better known to me than my own, and I am sure they are dearer. His repentance of misconduct seems sincere, yet his choices were driven by this fatal combination of pride, entitlement, and necessity. This encounter emphasizes that while unchecked sensibility can lead to heartbreak, unprincipled opportunism, choosing wealth over love and honor, brings its own incurable unhappiness. He's a tragic figure, really, one who chose wealth over love and now lives with the profound, bitter consequences of that decision.
This conversation serves as a crucial piece of the puzzle for Eleanor, helping her understand the full scope of Willoughby's character and the true nature of Marianne's past suffering.
It provides essential closure, not just for Eleanor, but for us as readers, too. Eleanor's heart, which had undergone many changes and suffered its own trials, is softened by his obvious suffering. Yet, with her characteristic sense and moral clarity, she reminds him, remember that you are married. She sees that his attachment to Marianne, when no longer allowable, tragically governed every thought, highlighting the deep irony of his situation. Eleanor's ability to listen without condoning, to feel compassion without excusing, demonstrates her mature sense in its highest form. She processes the painful truth, understanding the complexities of human motivation and the internal torment of a flawed individual, without sacrificing her moral judgment or excusing his past actions. This dialogue, therefore, offers a complete understanding of Willoughby's true nature, affirming that his regrets are real, but his actions were and remain inexcusable.
With all these revelations and the profound experiences she's undergone, Marianne undergoes a truly profound transformation during her recovery, embracing sense without losing her passionate spirit. It's a powerful journey of growth for her character, showing her maturation.
This signifies Marianne's most significant and hard-won growth, yes, a true integration of the novel's central themes. Her illness, described as weakening in its kind, but thankfully not long enough to make her recovery slow, forces her into this period of deep self-reflection. She confesses to Eleanor with a newfound humility, "My illness has made me think. It has given me leisure and calmness for serious recollection." She compares her own imprudence and want of fortitude, her unchecked sensibility and indulgence in grief, to Eleanor's duty and friendship, finally recognizing the quiet strength and wisdom of her sister.
A big moment for her.
Huge. She realizes with profound clarity that her own feelings had prepared my sufferings and that my want of fortitude under them had almost led me to the grave. This is a monumental shift. She later consciously embraces the plan for her days, dividing every moment between music and reading, and plans walks to Sir John's new plantations and the old ruins of the Priory. Her newfound appreciation for routine, intellectual pursuits, and a more measured approach to life shows a powerful integration of sense into her inherently passionate nature. She matures, not by abandoning feeling entirely, but by tempering it with reason, learning to channel her emotions rather than be consumed by them. She finds a healthier, more balanced way to live and love.
And the resolution of Marianne's story brings a quiet, enduring happiness, completing her journey from unchecked sensibility to a more balanced existence, finding a love that is steady and true.
Marianne's marriage to Colonel Brandon is a triumph of steady, proven affection over superficial allure and fleeting passion. It represents a mature understanding of love. Marianne, though softened and more reflective, does not lose her natural strength or her capacity for deep feeling. She eventually marries Colonel Brandon, and the text explicitly states, Marianne could never love by halves, and her whole heart became, in time, as much devoted to her husband as it had once been to Willoughby.
That's key, isn't it? It wasn't settling.
Exactly. It's not a compromise or a second-best love, but a deep, true devotion that grew from respect, understanding, and shared suffering. Brandon's constancy, his deep understanding of sorrow, and his unwavering support provide Marianne with a foundation of genuine love and profound respect. The narrative also circles back to Willoughby, who, hearing of her marriage, feels a pang, and his punishment was soon afterwards complete, and the voluntary forgiveness of Mrs. Smith, who gave him reason for believing that, had he behaved with honor towards Marianne, he might at once have been happy and rich.
The ultimate what if.
Precisely. This ending reflects a nuanced understanding of happiness, suggesting that true contentment often comes from quiet devotion, shared values, and proven character, rather than immediate, intense passion or mercenary ambition. It solidifies the central theme. Balanced sense and sensibility, combined with integrity, lead to lasting happiness and stability, while the pursuit of either extreme or self-interest alone often leads to regret.
And there you have it. Thanks for spending a little bit of your day with us and this story. If you enjoyed it, a simple like or subscribe helps the channel out more than you know. As we leave Eleanor and Marianne to their hard-won happiness, it's worth pondering. In our own modern lives, are we still grappling with the very same tension between our heart's strongest desires and the practical realities of the world around us? And how often do we mistake intense feeling for true depth? Be good and take care.